Hello friends, welcome to my channel. In today's video, we will be discussing on RESTful API or REST API. Nowadays, whatever APIs those are created, those are totally based upon REST. So again, REST is an architecture style which provides all the necessary details to create APIs. So ultimately, it is basically a representational state transfer. So it takes the state from your database and it transfer to the front end. So if you talk about the exact process how API works, so it starts from your user. Your user sends a request to your front end. It may be created in React, Angular, Vue, Next, any of the front end platform. Once this request is received, this front end application, it passes this information to the server. Now when we say server, there will be a REST API. So this REST API, it will check the type of request, because whenever there is any new request, it also contains the details what type of request it is. If it is get, post, put, patch, delete, so these are all the HTTP verb based upon which all the REST API works. So this verb is sent to the API, and now this API is connected to the database and it fetches the data. And when we say data, it fetches the state and then it transfers the state from server to the client, and then this information is available for the users. So there are two very similar concept. One is your REST API and another is your RESTful API. So REST API, as we discussed, that these are basically architecture style. It's not a framework, it is just a style how the API should work. Now RESTful API is basically the API that follows all the guidelines of REST API, then it is called RESTful API. Then if we talk about API history, so earlier we have SOAP API. Now this is REST API. So normally it is asked that what is the difference between REST API and SOAP API. So REST API, if we talk about, so REST API, again we just discussed that this is an architectural style. It gives you the standards how you should implement your API, whereas SOAP is a protocol. So before REST, SOAP was basically used for all the different API implementation. It's not a style or it is not a guideline, it is actually a protocol, and it is basically based upon XML. So it is not limited to only one protocol. It can use SMTP, HTTPS, SOAP protocol. But in case of REST, again it is very simpler, very lightweight. It only use HTTPS protocol and it is stateless. So there is no extra storage requirement. Nothing is stored on the server. In every request, we pass the detail of that particular request so that there is no overhead on the server. So it is basically stateless. But if we talk about SOAP, it can be both stateful and stateless. So it's very important that why REST API is more used nowadays, because of this stateless architecture, and again it is more efficient as compared to SOAP API. So SOAP API, basically it was using XML, but in REST API it is basically your JSON format. Now the very important thing is your HTTP verb that is being used. And if we talk about your REST API, the main HTTP verbs are get, if you want to get any information from the server. So again it is from user to front end to API, and API to database, and then again reverse from database to API to front end, and front end to user. Then we have post. So if you want to post, submit anything information. Put, if you want to update any information, you provide the full detail in your request, and that particular data will be updated in your database using the API. Patch is basically if you want to update a particular two, 3 points, if there is an object which contains 6 to 7 things, and if you want to update only 2 parts, so in that case you can use patch. Both are used for updation. One is full update, patch is partial update. Then delete, again these are all the same operations that we used in our database, that is called CRUD operation: create, read, update, delete. Similarly, this is the design principle, or this is the architectural style for REST API. Then whenever we are implementing this REST API, the main thing is like, since it is stateless, so there should be some way through which we can send information of the user to the server, and that is being implemented using token. So the message passing from client to server is using token. So again, we have a lot of libraries that we use. One is your JWT token, in which client sends a payload. And if we talk about payload may be combination of your username, your password, your anything, and that once it is being provided to the server using JWT token, it encrypts, it creates a token. So now this token contains these 3 payload information, and that token is passed to the client. So from that, once the token is being received, so after that, every request that is being sent to the server, this token is the part of the header, so that server can recognize that from where this request is coming, and based upon that it can serve. So using the token, the concept of stateless HTTP stateless is implemented. And earlier, like, we used to store in sessions, so lot of storage. If the number of users starts increasing, so there was lot of overhead on the server. So in order to make the REST API fast, and in order to optimize the REST API, the best way is to use stateless. And again, the standard format of passing request and response is your JSON format. Then there are some other points whenever we are implementing a REST API, and that is CORS. So cross origin resource sharing, that is a very common problem whenever you are going to implement any of the REST API, because your front end is on another domain, your API is on another domain, and now whenever domain a.com tries to access domain b.com, either using API, sending request using API, so this CORS error comes. And for that, it's very important that whenever you are creating any REST API, you need to allow which all domains can access your API. So sometimes people just put star. So star means this REST API will be sending information to all the domains. But in order to make it more secure, just try to make sure that you're only allowing those domains which are connected, or which front end those actually wants to get the data. So based upon that, only the domains who are authorized, and whenever you create any API, you know that from what all domains the request is going to come. So this is all about REST API. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe, and thank you for watching this video.